Hey guys, welcome to my studio. I'm Melinda with Primrose and Pearl Bath Products, and today I am making a watermelon themed soap. I have wanted to make a watermelon soap for a really long time, and I have a new collection coming out next month called Food Fight. Everything is food themed, so it seemed like a really good time to finally bust out the watermelon. The fragrance I'm using today is Sour Watermelon Candy from Indigo Fragrance, and it's really lovely. It's not super sweet or like fake smelling like some of the watermelons out there because it does have that sour vibe to it. So I thought it was a really good fit for this. The first thing I'm doing is I am laying out some dark green soap dough that I had previously made. I wanted to have those accent lines like you see on a watermelon on the rind. So I am adding these little accents into the bottom. I used my dough extruder. Technically it's a clay extruder, but I use it for the soap dough. I used the extruder to make them into a triangle shape, and now I'm just placing them down in the bottom, and I'm trying to make sure that they're really stuck to the bottom because when I pour in my first layer of color, I don't want them moving around or floating up in the soap or whatever. I want them to stay where I put them. So I'm being really careful, making sure that they are stuck down and exactly where I want them to be. Now that I have finished my first loaf, getting all that set in there, I'm going to move on and do the same thing in the second one. Okay, my accents are done, and now I'm mixing the first layer. I am making this as a layered soap, so I really want the first layer to set before I go to the next and the next. So I am emulsifying my oil with my lye water in batches because I don't want to mix the whole thing all at once and then have part of it be too runny for the next layer, and then after that it's gonna be too thick or whatever. I didn't want to mess anything up on this one, so I'm going layer by layer. I did a bunch of math before I started the video so that I could make sure that I had the right amount of oils and lye water solution. So next my lye water goes in with the correct measurement, and then I'm going to go ahead and start the emulsification process, which means just taking my stick blender and making sure to get the oils and the water emulsified or blended together. Now, the idea for this entire collection came from one specific soap that my 8-year-old designed. I think I've talked about her before on the channel. She is kind of the heart and soul sometimes of the designs. She comes up with some wacky ideas, but we make it happen for her. She came up with an idea for a spaghetti and meatball soap, and it was her dream soap. She actually sketched it out a year ago, and apparently it is just the soap of her dreams. So I told her I would finally make her spaghetti and meatball soap, and then I was like, well, what am I going to do with it? So now I got to do a whole collection. So that's the whole reason behind the food theme, and you'll see the spaghetti soap in another video in a couple of weeks here. I'm working on editing that one. Right now I am mixing the lighter green into my first layer for my watermelon soap. I'm whisking with an actual whisk because I just dumped the mica colorant straight into my soap batter. Sometimes it can be hard to blend with a spatula when you're dumping the mica right in. So I like to use a whisk or even my stick blender for that, but I was afraid of accelerating this layer too much. I wanted to be able to tweak the color if I needed to, but it ended up coming out perfect. It was just a precautionary thing using that whisk. I find it accelerates more than using the spatula, but less than using the stick blender. So my green's going in. I'm just trying to make sure I have it evenly in both of the soap molds here. And once I finish that, I'm going to move on to blending my next layer. So here's my next layer. This is going to be the white layer. I can't remember what it's called, but it's, part of the rind. There's the dark green, the light green, and then the white layer. Now that I have my emulsification going, I'm going to mix up my titanium dioxide. The titanium dioxide that I have is water soluble, so I put a little bit of distilled water in that little bowl there. I'm going to add a little bit of the titanium dioxide, mix that up. I'm just using a little spatula to do this today. And then once I have that completely dissolved in the water, I'm going to go ahead and add that to my emulsification and blend it in. Sometimes titanium dioxide can accelerate a batter, especially because I'm working with such a small amount of batter for this layer, so I'm definitely hand blending it this go around with the spatula. I wanted my batter fluid enough that it would be completely flat when I poured it, so I didn't want it to accelerate to the point where it was going to get kind of clumpy and hard to get into the mold. So here I'm pouring into my mold. My green layer has set, but I'm still using my spatula to break the fall of the batter, which basically means pouring it into the mold gently so it doesn't kind of punch through that bottom layer, and then you don't get those nice straight even layers. I failed to do this later on in the video, so you'll end up seeing at the cut what it looks like when you don't break the fall in a soap. I thought that the white layer had set up enough, but I was wrong, and like I said, you'll be able to see that later. So just being really careful, pouring the white in, making sure I cover all of the green so that I can have a nice, crisp, clean layer of that white. This is my first year that I've made a watermelon soap, so we'll see how it goes. I have made a watermelon sugar scrub in the past and watermelon bath bombs in the past, but I don't know, you know what? I think I did make a melt and pour, like a bumpy soap is what a friend of mine calls them. They're bumpy soaps, but they're like the massage bar soaps. I think I did those one year. But this will be my first time doing a cold process watermelon bar soap. All right, my last layer is going here. I'm emulsifying my oils and my lye water solution, and now I'm adding my colorant. I used Candy Apple Red from Nurture Soap, and I believe it's Material Girl from Nurture Soap. So it's kind of a red with a little bit of pink and then like a neon pink to get the color that I wanted, because I wanted it to be a nice, vibrant, not too red, not too pink, kind of in between. And I think I really nailed it with this one. I don't always nail the color, but I was really happy with the way that this one turned out. I'm going to finish blending all of the colorant into my batter. I'm going to grab my spatula and really make sure I get to all those corners. Everything is mixed in. Now, here's where I screwed up. I thought that the white layer had set up enough because of that titanium dioxide. So you can see I did not use my spatula to break the fall on this one, and it did end up breaking through. It wasn't too terrible, but it definitely was not the nice, super crisp separation of color layers like I originally wanted. It ends up being okay, but little things. So I'm pouring some of my watermelon color batter in, and making sure that it's even. I'm not filling it all the way up because my next step is I have more soap dough that I'm going to use for embeds. So you can kind of see off to the side, I'm grabbing it. I made little teardrop shapes with my clay extruder so that it would look like watermelon seeds. Right now I'm cutting it to length so that it fits inside of my mold. I like to do this on the spot just because I can ensure a better fit. Sometimes, maybe one mold is just slightly different size than another mold. I don't have a whole set of all the same molds. I kind of have a hodgepodge of different ones I've ordered. So I cut my embeds on the spot and I'm going to place them in carefully. I wanted them all offset from each other. So I'm going to put them in gently, and then I'm using a tool just to kind of push it down a little bit more so that when I go to pour more of my pink soap batter in, it's not warping it or twisting it or, I don't know, doing anything crazy with it. So I've got that little tool there. I'm pushing it down. I'm also making sure it's all facing the way that I want so that the top of the seed is actually facing up towards the top of the soap. So I'm going to go ahead and continue working on layering in the soap and the seeds, and then I'll be back. Now that my soap is all in the mold and I have bashed it down on the counter to try and get rid of any air bubbles, I'm going through and adding some texture with a spoon. I wanted the middle of the soap to be higher than the edges of the soap, so I'm pulling from one side to the middle all the way down, getting kind of ridges in there, and then I'll go ahead and move to the other side and do the same thing, adding the texture. I love adding texture to the soap. I don't know. It's just like you get to sit and play with it and see what the soap's going to do. It's just soothing. It's like when I do the swirls for the top of the soap. I think doing the tops of the soaps might be my favorite part. There's just something about it that's really zen. Like the relief of, okay, I've gotten all the soap in the mold. Nothing more can really go wrong. Now I get to just kind of play around and relax and have fun with the last little bit of the soap that I have to do. All right, curious minds want to know, do you eat a lot of watermelon personally or in your home? I feel like we do in the summer. It's hard to get good watermelon, I think, in the wintertime, which is sad because I really love to eat watermelon. But in the summer, we'll get it, and me and the girls can go through a whole watermelon in like a day or two. It's just such an easy snack to cut up a whole watermelon and bring it with. But I want to know, is that something that you like? Is that something that you do? Otherwise, what's your favorite fruit? I'd love to know. All right, finishing up on my texturing here, pulled it side to side, and then I'm going to go through and kind of swirl the little middle part because it had ended up making these tall peaks, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but I have stuff I'm going to put on the top, so I didn't want to have too tall of a peak and then have things at an awkward angle. So I'm going through and just like flattening it the teeniest little bit. My last step is to add some watermelon seeds on the top. So I took the watermelon seed embeds that I made and I sliced them up really thin to turn them into little baby watermelon seeds to go on the top. This is one of those situations where it's like, do as I say, not as I do. You should always wear gloves when you are making soap or working with soap that has not saponified yet if you are a soap maker, but unfortunately the little baby seeds were getting stuck to my gloves, so I had to forgo them, and I'm just trying to like drop them on as gently as I can without actually touching anything. My soap has sat for about 24 hours at this point, so it's definitely solid enough to go ahead and cut. First, I take off the little end bit so that I can have a nice straight edge on the end of my soap, and then I'm going to go into cutting all of my bars. I've marked them all off at the 1 inch mark. I cut my bars to be 1 inch in width. And here is what it looks like on the inside. So you can see where that white kind of bled through from where I did not break the fall on that. But you can see the dark green accent at the bottom and the little seeds on the inside and on the top. And I think it just turned out so perfect for a watermelon soap. So let me know what you think in the comments. Until next time, thanks for watching.